Welcome to the Passages from the Heart podcast, a podcast featuring real people sharing real stories about adventure out on the water. I'm your host, Shell Hart. Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Passages from the Heart podcast. Today's episode features a fellow Com-Pac Yacht Owners Association member, or CPYOA, as we call it, forum member, Al Santini. I've asked Al to come on the show because he owned a Com-Pac Eclipse for 9 years. And he also just purchased last summer a Com-Pac Horizon. So the Eclipse is a sloop rigged 21 foot or so vessel, and the Com-Pac Horizon is a 20-foot gaff-rigged catboat. So he's went from sailing sloops to catboats. And so we're going to talk quite a bit, extensively rather, about each of these vessels and how they're rigged, outfitted, and how they sail. We even talk about how to heave to in both types of vessels because there is a difference. And so we get into that. The other thing that's very interesting about Al is that he's a published author. He has written a book series of 3 books, sailing fiction. And I'm going to be including the links to those books in the podcast show notes, as well as in the video description for the YouTube version of this podcast. So yeah, he gets into a little bit of the plot for the characters of the books, and they sound like they're kind of a thriller sailing fiction genre. So I'm excited to get some copies myself and dive into the stories. They sound absolutely amazing. So this episode is particularly geared for people who've gotten or wanting to know a little bit more about the Eclipse and about the Horizon Cat, but I will also say that we talk about other types of compact models in our discussion, as well as even other types of sailboats that aren't compacts. So Al has been sailing since 1973, so he has a wealth of experience and knowledge where sailing is concerned. So I think that this episode will offer a little bit or a lot for all of you listeners out there. And speaking of you listeners, as always, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to you for supporting this podcast. I'm just a little old gal out here in the big old podcast world, and I'm not doing this to make a name for myself or to make money. I'm not doing it for any of those reasons at all. I'm doing this from purely the respect of having a deep love for sailing and for finding community and connecting with others who have a deep love of sailing. And that's all you. So thank you so much. The other thing I wanted to say is if you have an idea for a show, or if you're even interested in being a guest, I'm always looking for guests for the show, and I would love to hear from you. So go ahead and visit my website, passagesfromtheheart.wordpress.com. And from there, you'll find a link on my homepage that's called Let's Raft Up. If you click that, it'll take you to a little submit form where you can type in your name and all that jazz. And yeah, reach out to me because I'd love to hear from you. Oh, yeah. And also, one other thing, you know me, I'm always adding things on at the last minute here. I just wanted to let you know that there is a section in the beginning where I unfortunately forgot to mute myself. And so you can hear my dogs barking just for some time earlier in the interview. So just bear with me, that will be over soon enough. And you should have better audio for the rest of the show. So I apologize about that. I just, just totally spaced out doing the mute thing. And I forgot what the shortcut control was for Zoom to do that. So anyhow, please forgive my oversight. With that, let's get on with the show. Hey, Al, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Yay!
Good, 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 good. I have my bourbon in
Well,
hand. I'm all set.
I have a tall glass of water because I often get frog throat when I do these. So, and then I have
Uh,
a little side of chocolate to
okay, well, that's good.
That's my
Not a
vice
girl.
is chocolate.
Not a girl. Well, I guess
Well,
my vice may be bourbon. I don't know.
well, I am absolutely over the moon thrilled that you reached out to me when I sent out my request. I have been
Mhm.
wanting to get you on this show for a long, long time, actually, and I've tried sending you a couple of those private messages on the Com-Pac Yacht Owners Forum, but I think that most people may be like me where I don't always log in regularly and check for that because you have to I
Yeah,
think
I
log in.
don't. Yeah, I
Yeah.
admit I don't. I'm on it every day though.
Yeah, I am too, but I
I
don't.
check
Yeah.
CPYOA every day.
Yep, I do too. I just don't always, if I don't have anything to chime in on, though, I don't typically log in.
Yeah,
So that's kind of my downfall. But since we're talking about the CPYOA, I just wanted to let our listeners know that's the Com-Pac Yacht Owners Forum. There's all sorts of different forums from how-tos to the different models that Com-Pac had made, and it's just a great place. I feel the last 5 years, I actually a little more than that now. I think that I've been going to this forum to, connect with all of these wonderful folks like you, Al, in the Com-Pac community. It's such not just a valuable resource for information, but
it
it's
is.
just,
It
I don't
is.
know. It's just, yeah, it's just great to be able to hear about what other people are
Yeah, and
doing. And
the
yeah,
other thing too that I always like is, like for instance, right now there's a couple of compact guys down in the Keys, Crazy Carl and Chris, and they had two boats down there, and it was an open invitation. I was going to try to go, but it's a long story. The other things came up, but I mean, that. And then there's Carlisle Rendezvous in the summer, second or third week in June, and that draw, that's where it's advertised. So you get this. There's also something on the East Coast, so it's a decent
yeah, the
place to
Barnegat Bath.
hang out. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. No, I just love it. And I have to say it's for me, I've noticed over the last couple of years, maybe, or at least the last year, it seems um that a lot of people are tending to sort of visit the Facebook version of the forums. But I've
Yeah.
noticed actually in the last month or so, interestingly, we've got a lot of new members. It seems
Yep.
like I've seen some new usernames come on and also a lot more activity, which maybe it's just because it's the off season for us here in this part of the world and we're all going stir crazy. Although you're going to be able to be sailing, I'm sure soon, if not already, because
Yep.
you're
I
where
was
you're
I was
located.
help
But
I was helping a friend with an eclipse today who he just got his eclipse
oh,
last spring down here and unfortunately has not put it in the water yet. And I said, Bob, what are you doing? He said, well, I need help. So I said, okay. So I went over and we put the outboard on, we got the outboard running, and I did some other little things that because I had an eclipse for 9 years that he didn't know how to do that I did. And we're gonna go in the water maybe Friday.
oh, great. Yeah,
In
that's fantastic. Well, I'm excited to dive into all of the different well, the different compact boats you've had, but others. But I thought usually what I like to do is, sort of start from the beginning with sailing and one's life. So I don't really know what your background is with respect to sailing. Like, how did you get into sailing? Did you do it as a kid, or is this something
no,
that you started doing as
no,
an adult? I'd love to hear how you got into
started
it.
started doing it as an adult. I was a scuba diver, and my diving partner, Lil Brown, said, "Hey, I'm going to take a course up in Lake Geneva." And we're in the western suburbs of Chicago. And Lake Geneva is a beautiful sailing lake north of where we are. And so, he asked me if I wanted to go with him. So we took a course, and we were on butterflies. And that's my first thing, and that was 1973. I'm aging myself now, but
Okay.
anyway,
Yep.
that was
I'm
1973. And then 1973, then he bought a boat. He bought a butterfly, and we sailed the butterfly. We sailed the daylights out of it, and then we got to the. He decided to buy a bigger boat. He bought a Buccaneer, and we
Yep.
sailed the
Hmm.
daylights out of that for a long time. And finally, I bought my own sailboat. I bought a Zuma first of all, and that's when I really learned how to sail. And then I've had nine sailboats, so I've and I have two right now, but I've had nine over the years.
Yeah. Okay. So with the butterfly, I actually was looking at one of those last year because I was looking to get some sort of a easily trailerable launching, retrieving sailboat to just take to my local lakes that are much closer than
Yeah,
where I was up at Superior and all that. And they look like they're really fun and they sound like they're a great boat to start learning to sail on. My only
yeah,
worry was that I thought it was maybe going to be a little bit more athletic sailing than I'm able to do at this stage of my life.
it
So,
is. It's
so
very.
I
I
decided
would.
not to get one.
Yep. Yep. I would not go in it now because I can't move fast enough.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm older than you, Shell, so that makes it even worse.
Well, you know what? I love it when I see people who are older than me still actively participating in the art and sport and science of sailing because, it is really, I've talked to other people and they basically have alluded to the fact that if they can't sail, they may as well not, you know, they may as well not
Yeah,
live and not say any words. And some days I have to say I do feel like that myself. And I'm sorry,
yeah.
my dogs are barking up a storm.
It's okay. My current boat, Horizon, Com-Pac Horizon, I bought from a wonderful gentleman, Al Parker, on the East Coast, and he had sailed since he was 13 years old, and I think he was 84
Oh, wow.
when I bought the boat, which would make him 85 now because I've had the boat for a year. And it was kind of sad,
Yeah,
and I could see he was sad when they were loading the boat onto my trailer. I mean, I could see that it was really bothering him, but he said he had kind of aged out, and he was worried, and his wife was saying you got to get rid of the boat and everything else. But he had sailed since he was 13 years old. Just a wonderful guy and a perfect
yeah,
person to buy a boat from
yeah,
because he had taken good care of it and he loved sailing. And it was funny, he had advertised the
yes,
boat at a good price, and every time people come and look at it and say, "Wow, it's in really good shape." Well, it's a 21. It's not an old boat. And this was in 2025, so
right.
the boat was only 4 years old, but he would tell him, he'd say, "Yeah, that's the price." He said, "But it doesn't have a trailer," and that's when they would all back out. And so
Oh,
by the
right. I
time,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, by the time I got to him, he said, "Well, here, how about this? Um, oh, I want to say the name of the trailer place too fast. Triad Trailers is in
Oh, yeah, North
Raleigh.
Carolina,
It's in
right?
Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm in western suburbs of Illinois. So he said, call up Mike and have Mike, give you a price for a trailer. And whatever that price is, I'll take it off the price of the boat. Because he, at that point, was getting kind of desperate. It was fall, and he didn't want to really keep it another winter because he wasn't using it. So I got me a Horizon, and it's a very unusual Horizon because he ordered it brand new. It took him a year to build it, and they built it exactly the way he wanted it, which means it has the two-cylinder diesel in it, and it has a tiller. And all the other Horizons have wheel steering. But he didn't want wheel; he wanted a tiller. So there's only two of them supposedly of the couple of hundred that were built with a diesel and a tiller, and I got one of them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I personally I think would also prefer a tiller too, but I mean, there is, I think, something, it's a, well, that boat, if I remember correctly, was constructed from a mold of was it a Herreshoff America? Is
Airshot.
that
Right,
where it came
right.
from?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. And
Matter of
so
fact,
probably, that wheel.
that's the specs that they use to build the trailer.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
it's the
Yep.
same.
And I'm
The only
sure
difference
those.
is it's got a center board. That's the only difference.
Exactly. Yep. But those boats, those cat boats had wheels if memory serves. I don't think that I don't know actually now that I'm trying to think that of all the different cat boats that I looked into because I checked out, I was really um pretty cat boat crazy and I still am actually to be honest with you, but
No,
I
you're
almost
just
bought
crazy. You're just crazy, Shell. You're not
yeah, I
catboat
am.
crazy. It's
I
crazy
am
Shell or
crazy,
crazy
sailboat
Carl.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that for sure. I did actually almost end up with it was a Marshall Sanderling
Oh
up in
yeah,
Holland, Michigan that I had surveyed. And I ended up not getting it because there was some wood rot that the survey found in one of the bulkheads that separates the cockpit area from the cabin area. And I just thought,
yeah,
I didn't want to get involved with that sort of project primarily because of location of where I am. I don't have a lot of access to, knowledgeable professional tradespeople in the marine industry. Let's put it that way.
yeah,
But anyway,
yeah.
the Horizon and the Horizon Day Cat, I because I would was hoping maybe I'm not sure how much you know about the Day Cat. I actually got to see one in person here in
Yeah,
my home
yeah,
state, which was pretty amazing. It was an hour and a half away. But I would
yeah,
be curious to kind of talk a little bit to give our listeners a little bit of a difference about what those two models, because Com-Pac did offer so that let's
yeah.
let's even
Well,
start with like so the specifications on the boat are what's the length, the what does it
20,
draw? Do you
20
remember all
feet.
that stuff for your boat?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, it's 20 feet. Water line is 17.8, 8 feet 4 inches wide, and draws 2 feet with the board up and four or something with the board down. And it's got, I think when mast is up, it's
Right.
20 something feet, 20, 26, 27 feet tall. Um, but the major
Okay.
difference is, I mean, the hull is the same. The major difference is the
Right.
top half of the boat because you can put. I've had six people in my boat, but I have to admit two of the six were kids, so they weren't, they didn't take up quite as much room as old fat men like me. Um, and it's that's about the max on the boat. I don't know exactly how long the seats are, but when you look at the Horizon Day Cat, they took away easily 50, 60% of the cabin and it all became cockpit. So you could literally dance in this thing. I bet you could put 12 people in it. Literally, I mean, if it would float, but you could easily put six people on a side because I think the cockpit is over 9 feet long. So
Yeah, I seem to
it's a
recall
massive
that.
boat. And I looked at it and I thought, well, okay, I like to go places and maybe gunk hole a little bit and spend a night in a boat. I take the boat down to Carlisle Lake and spend three-quarters of a week in it, and and so I kind of live in it a little bit sometimes, and so I wanted a cabin, and when I was looking,
Yeah.
my main goal. My previous boat was an Eclipse, Com-Pac Eclipse, which is an absolutely phenomenal boat. I think one of the best sailing boats around. But it had the disadvantage. Mine had the disadvantage that it was more work for me. And like I said, I'm getting older. I'm pushing 80. This year I'll turn 80. And I decided I needed to get out of the outboard business because especially down here, I always worried that we're in a campground, by the way. We're not camping, but we're in a park model in a campground down in Florida, and my boat backs up to a the Legacy Trail, which is a bike trail. And it would be so easy for somebody to come off the Legacy Trail, hook my outboard, and take it with them without any difficult. All they need is a bolt cutter. So I always took the outboard and put it in my pickup truck. Well, I'm getting too old for that because they're getting heavier every year. I think it's the
Yeah.
saltwater buildup in them. But anyway, so that's so I wanted to be easier. Obviously, the Horizon is easier because it's only one sail. Stepping the
Right.
mast is easier because the mast is pinned in place, whereas the Eclipse, you have to unpin and you have to slide the mast and you have to attach things, and it's just more to do, and then of course the
Right.
outboard, and that was the main reason. And I like, the Eclipse was 21 feet, so I like that size boat. It's a nice boat. I know I can handle it myself in all kinds of weather, and of course they're compact. They made a good boat.
Right. Yeah. I have to say that when I saw that Horizon Day Cat, so the version of your boat, just so listeners understand the difference again, is that your boat has the cabin, whereas the Day Cat version does has just a small cuddy cabin, which to be honest with you, in my personal opinion, not that I've compared it to a Horizon Cat, because I've not seen one of those in the flesh, but this
Mhm.
Horizon Day Cat cabin was quite spacious, I thought.
Yeah.
You could very comfortably, I mean, you're not going to stand in it, which you wouldn't stand in your boat either, I don't
No,
believe.
no, no,
Uh,
no. Oh,
but still plenty of room to stretch out, like fully extend, like even for tall people, 6 feet or more, I would say easily. And certainly, just a place to put the porta potty or whatever, if you will, that you use for
yeah,
that sort of thing.
yeah. See,
And
the way the boat's designed, the way the Horizon Day Cat is designed, is if you took a look at the horizon and you start at the bow, the first thing you come to is a porta potty cabinet and storage. And then there's a little bulkhead, and you come after the bulkhead, you have a sink on one side, you have a cooler on the other. Okay, now take all of that, the cooler, the sink, the porta potty, and the cabinetry, and get rid of it. And that's a Horizon Day Cat. So in other words, there's no head cabin.
right.
There's no and then I mean, it's a smaller cabin, but I mean, it's perfectly adequate, but it's not what I
Right.
wanted. And of course,
Yeah, I mean,
you
yeah,
got
you
you got
could
to have,
still definitely camp overnight in the day cat version. It's just that you're going to have, like you were saying, some of those accoutrements or amenities of having a sink and a
yeah,
cooler and all those
yep,
thing will
yep,
make it.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
The built
yep.
the built-in cooler is dynamite because it's got a drain in the bottom of that drains into the bilge. And then
Wow.
the bilge pump goes on periodically, but you throw, Diet Cokes or beer or whatever you feel like drinking it. Throw a 5 pound bag of ice in it, and you're good for a day and a half. And because it's really well insulated. Down in Carlisle, we had 90 plus degree days, and I would go through less than 5 pounds of ice every day, and I had the cooler
Oh,
filled.
wow.
I just buy a 5 pound bag of ice at the marina that we stay at, and dump it in there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got some interesting designs. There's the cabinetry and the space, and I mean, there's so many. I'm constantly finding things. It's like, oh, I didn't know that was there. Lots
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Like
lots
little.
and lots of storage room.
So tell me a little bit. So I'm thinking like of my Compact 23 now and the storage that I have on that boat. I'd be curious how it's so for example, on port and starboard above the main settee area, you have like a pull-out cabin, and not a pull-out, I'm sorry. It's a drop-down cabinet door, and then
Yeah,
behind that there's shelves built in. You probably know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I do, and you don't,
However,
and that's not on the horizon though. The Horizon
Okay.
has no upper cabinets.
Okay, so let's can you give me an idea? Let's say you're standing in the cockpit and you go down below. Can you give us a lay of the land of like what people, I mean, I know
Yeah,
you work from the bow floor, but
yeah.
imagine if you're
Okay.
coming
So
from the cockpit
you
companionway.
you step down. There's two steps, and the both steps are removable. And first of all, the top step opens up so you can check the oil and the diesel. So it's designed that way. It's hinged, and then you take the steps out when you want to do any kind of service on it. So that's the first thing. Immediately to port and starboard, there are two berths, and they're 6.5 feet long, and I'm 5 feet 9.5, so I have plenty of room in there. And there's a lot of leg room. You know, your legs are up under the cockpit seats, but there's probably 2 feet in there. So there's a lot of ability to move around. And then, and as you go forward, where the 6.5 foot berths end is where on the port side you have a built-in cooler which holds, I don't know, you probably put a case of Coke in there or whatever. I mean, it holds quite a bit, and it's built in, and it's got 2 inches of insulation all around it. And on the starboard side, you have a sink, and underneath on the starboard side, underneath the settee, is a cabinetry, and you open it up, and there's a 10-gallon internal water tank. And the only disadvantage that I see to this is you can't clean it easily. Whereas my um, Eclipse had a 5-gallon container that you could drag out. You could bring it home. You could wash it. You could bleach it. You could do everything with it, and then fill it and put it back in. And you always had clean water. This one, um, Al, the owner of the boat prior to me, and he's the first owner, I'm the second. He never used it, and I haven't used it to date. I've just got bottled water on board, and plenty of that. And then there's a bulkhead, and on the other side of the bulkhead, both port and starboard, there are cabinets, which if you open them up, they're probably 1.5 feet deep by a foot and maybe 1.5 feet. So they're not square, but you can put quite a bit of stuff in there. And in the middle, in the bow, or in the bow of the boat, is the porta potty cabinet, and it's actually in a cabinet. So you can lift it up, and you can pull the front of it off, so you have a spot to put your legs. And then on the front side of it is a door, and you open the door, and there's a chain locker for the anchor, and that's the boat, that's the cockpit. Lots of
Right.
underneath the settees, there are two on both sides. There are two cabinets, which they're cavernous. I mean, they're probably 3 feet long and a foot deep, and the only one of the four that's taken with anything is the one on the starboard side that has the water tank in it.
Right.
Okay, so you got
Right.
all this room to put stuff, and then in the cockpit you have two lazarettes, and you open them, and they're really deep. They're probably 4 feet deep, and it's
Right.
unbelievable how much stuff you can put in there. I mean,
Yeah.
I carry too much junk, and the problem with this boat is I have room for it all. So
It encourages you to
it
get more
does,
junk then, right?
it does. It's not conducive to what the Eclipse was a great boat and everything, but it I mean, even though it was a foot longer, it was substantially smaller. And today, when I was
Right.
helping this friend of mine, Bob, with his Eclipse, I realized again the difference in the two boats. Eclipse is so much easier to get into because it's got the open transom. Mine does not. It's got this high transom. It's got the same stupid ladder, and you wind up hanging on the boat to try to get your butt up there, and it's difficult. And what I do a lot of times with my boat is I bring a ladder along, little folding ladder, and I put the ladder alongside, and I use that to go up and down into the boat rather than the
Oh,
ladder on the back of the boat.
yeah. I have to see what your ladder looks like because the ladder on the 25, that's how, well, when the boat was on the hard, that's how I would get up onto the boat with the swim ladder. But it was like, a regular type of swim ladder, whereas on my Legacy, it's maybe 10 inches across and you could barely get like a foot on there.
Yeah, yeah,
But I do use it to get on my boat also on the hard with that little ladder. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying about that.
yeah. See,
Um,
that's not to I'm not trying to compare boats, but if you were to try to compare them, the I'll call it an advantage to the Eclipse is the open transom. So you have a three-step ladder, and all you have to do is grab onto the top pipes, and you're in the boat because there's no transom. Whereas on like the Com-Pac 19 and the Com-Pac Horizon, which they share a lot of similarities in terms of the height and everything else, and that's a challenge. And when the boat's in the water, if you're trying to
yeah,
get in let's say you're in waist deep water, well, you better be really athletic, and I'm not to get into it.
yeah,
So what I have is
yeah,
I added a set of rope with wood steps, three that clip on. So now I have the four steps on the boat and three more. And that's how
yeah.
I get
That's
on when
I
the
like.
boat's in the water.
I think I'll do that for my boat. That's a great idea, Al. I like that because I read a lot about people offshore sailing, and a lot of these folks are single-handed sailors, which I want to get into that with you too shortly. But they often talk about, if you go overboard, even if you're tethered,
Oh
you're
yeah.
still always
Yep.
it's difficult
Yep.
to get back in the boat. And so some people
Yeah,
have
you got
talked
one.
about different sorts of,
Yep. You got one shot.
yeah, systems
That's
that
what
they
I always
devise.
say.
Yeah.
Megan, one shot,
Yep.
especially if the water's cold, forget it.
Yeah. Well, so I'm, you've mentioned the eclipse a few times, and I know you had that eclipse for several years. And so what
9
I'm curious, yeah. So what boat did you come from before you got that boat again?
before the eclipse.
Yes. What was the boat before
Precision
that?
Precision 21.
Oh, right. That's right. And you had a couple of those, right? A smaller
I
one and
had
a bigger
two.
one.
I had a Precision 18 first, and then I had a Precision 21. Both fantastic
Right.
boats. But and the
They,
reason I got rid of the 21 was not because of the way it sailed or anything else, because I loved that. It was because it took two men and a boy to get the mast up. It's and that's when I went to Compact, I would change to Compact because my wife and I were snowbirds, so we come down here to Florida and for at least 3 months a year, and I like to bring a boat along. Well, I could never bring the Precision along because I didn't have two people down here to help me get the mast up. 'Cause it would at
right.
my age it took three people. So that's when I
Yeah.
sold the Precision 21 and I bought the Eclipse because I could do everything by myself. I used to tell people it takes me about 20 minutes to get the boat ready and step the mast in the water. And if I have help, it takes me about 25. So
Yeah.
without help, it was 20
Yeah.
minutes, and the Horizon is faster than that.
Right. Can you, since we're on that topic of mast raising, to tell the listeners a little bit about how that mast raising system on your Horizon? I know you mentioned a little bit already with the Eclipse, but how does that system, which I believe they call it the mast tender system, Com-Pac
Yeah,
called
yeah,
it that?
Mast Ender. It uses a short gin pole. It's about J pole. It's probably about 3.5 feet long, and there's a peg on the mast, on the top part of the mast, not at the top, but the mast has the stub, which goes down into the boat, and then it has the top part which is hinged, and it's always hinged. So if you walk up to the boat right now, that mast is in a position. All you have to do is lift it up. And what mast ender does is you put the pole in place, and when the pole's in place, on the end of the pole, there's a plastic. Um, doodad. I don't know what it's called, but it's a piece of plastic that has the shape of um, the swag fitting for the head stay. Okay, so the head stay kind of pops into it, and then coming off the bottom of the head stay, there is a pulley system which goes back to the cockpit. So sitting in the cockpit, what I usually do um, is I'll grab a hold of that line which goes up to the head stay, and I'll grab the mast and I'll raise the mast up, which puts it at about maybe a 20, 30-degree angle, and then I'll pull on the line, and there's a cleat, so it pulls through and it locks in place. Then three turns around the winch, put my winch handle in, and start cranking it up, and you just literally the first couple, I can't go all the way around because I'm not strong enough. So I wind up pulling toward me, pushing, pull, push, and at the same time that you're pulling on the line, and the mast just goes up slicker and snot. And once the mast is up, it's being held by this line. So all you do is walk forward, put a pin in the mast, walk back, release the line, and then pull the head stay down, take the pole off, and um, the little clip. That's not a clip; it's a pin. The pin is holding the mast up, so you can take your time doing that. You lock the head stay down, lock it down, put two pins in it, and you're done. And you're going to sail away. So
So,
it literally, I started my first excuse me, my first introduction to mast ender was on down here and a buddy named Butch, and he had a Sun Cat. And so the first time I sailed on a Sun Cat, it was like, wow. And he didn't even use the J pole. We just grabbed the mast and pushed it up. I mean, there was nothing to it. Put the pin in
right.
place, lock the head stay down, we'd leave the pin in place, curved pin it's called. And so that was my first, and I remembered that when I wanted to get rid of the P-21. And that's why I
Yeah,
went to the Eclipse. And to be honest with you, I was still a sloop kind of person. And now I've
right.
changed. If you can't see my shirt right now, but I have a cat boat on. It's a
Oh,
white cat boat on a blue shirt.
oh wow.
So I
Well,
be,
that's another thing that I wanted to get into with you as well, is kind of talking about the differences, especially where the sailing part is concerned with sailing a sloop versus the gaff-rigged cat boat, because I think you might, I don't know if you remember, but I last fall I was looking to get a Sunday cat or a sun cat,
hmm
after I sold my 25. And I actually was looking at your boat too earlier in the year,
Yep.
the Eclipse, when you
Yep.
had it for sale. I was considering that. And I just I sort of had this, I guess I was, no other way to say it than I was feeling my age and thinking that I want to have something that I feel I can be self-sufficient doing on my
And
own.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
important. I agree. And
Yep. So that,
I'm the same way. That's why I went to catboat. In terms of sailing, people said, "Oh, the catboat's so much more tender," and I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, the one thing that I learned right away is if you have weather helm and a catboat, pull up on the centerboard. And you could, if you pull up, I use my left hand and pull the centerboard up, and I'm steering with my right hand on the tiller, and all of a sudden your weather helm disappears. That's where you lock your centerboard down. And once you get used
wow.
to that, the wind is nothing. I mean, I have a reef that I can put in and it's a big sail. I mean, it's 200 square feet, 205 square feet of sail in one sail, whereas the Eclipse has 200 square feet of sail in two sails. So, I mean, when you
Right.
look up the first time, you say, "Wow, that's a hell of a sail." But you know,
Yes. Yeah, I thought that when I looked at that Horizon Daycat, that I was looking at some is weird. The one of the only videos you can find of the Horizon Daycat is or what this boat that I actually was able to see in person, and the reason is that the guy that made the videos, he was in somewhere near maybe Chicago, oh no, Milwaukee, I think, and he
hmm
sailed the boat on. Lake
like
Michigan, but then
Michigan, right?
somebody, my state, yeah, my state bought the boat from him. So if you go to, I'm just going to tell people, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes of the podcast too. There's I think the YouTube channel is called Robert Hall, maybe, and there's all sorts of videos of him sailing this Horizon Daycat. And when I saw that sail, I was like, holy cow, that's a big sail. Like,
It is.
it,
It is.
but you know
Well, like I
what
said,
though? Those
it's oh,
yeah, they're not quite as big as on like so the square footage on America of the same size I
no,
think is even
no.
bigger because I think
Yeah,
isn't it?
because yeah, the boom goes beyond the boom gallows
Past the
by
stern of the boat.
probably 3.5, 4 feet. Whereas
Right.
on the horizon, it's only about, I don't know, maybe a foot at the most beyond. So I mean, they add quite a bit of square footage because the boom is so much bigger. But
Yeah.
both the Horizon and the Horizon Day Cat and also the Sun Cats, the boats are so balanced. They really are. They really did their homework, I think, and came up with a boat that if you read a lot of stuff about cat boats, um, I mean, it doesn't have as many disadvantages, and it has the advantage of the centerboard. And when you put that centerboard down, people say, "Oh, they won't point where the dam." No, you'd be surprised. It points. I think it points pretty close to what my Eclipse did, and that was with a Genoa and a
Yeah.
main and a centerboard. So I mean, it's a decent boat, and the diesel makes it just. I mean, it's like, wow, this is what I needed. But I mean, it's just so easy. Come in and out of
Yeah.
port and everything else.
Well, one of the other things when I was looking at the cat boats too, that I learned, which I wasn't aware of, was that so, for example, going back to the Marshall Sanderling and the Herreshoff, if I'm maybe probably not pronouncing that correctly,
Kershaw.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah, those boats, they don't have the ballast in those boats is not like how it is for the Horizon Cat and Horizon Day
No,
Cat.
no, it's
And
a
it's
horseshoe.
completely yeah, completely different setup, and
Yeah,
it made. I learned that there actually are bricks of lead called ingots or ignots, or
yep,
I'm not sure
yep,
that you move around because cat boats were working boats, right? And so when they
right.
would catch their fish, they'd have to shift the ballast around to compensate for the catch that they were
Yeah,
hauling back to port. And so
yeah, and
I
that
when I
that
learned about
ballast
that,
that ballast
yeah,
was an afterthought. Whereas what um, Com-Pac did is they filled the keel with concrete. So the
right,
advantage to that, and that's a very typical of Com-Pac, is it puts the weight real deep in the water. So the weight on my
right.
boat is 2 feet in the water, and as a result, I mean, I've been out in 20-mile-an-hour winds and it barely heals.
Yeah, and so
It's stable.
yeah, that's one of the things that was a big selling point for me on the Horizon Cat or Horizon Day Cat or the Sun Cat and Sunday Cats because of exactly what you're saying. They
Hmm.
don't have that movable ballast in the bilge of the boat, and it just
Right.
I don't know, just to me it just
And
felt
they're
like
well,
I don't know.
I'll give you an actual example. Chris, one of the guys that shows up, I can't think of Chris's last name. He's got a Sun Cat, and I mean, he's first of all, he's an excellent sailor. He's a very, very competent sailor. And so we're out in Carlisle Lake, and we're all the way at the north, almost at the north end of the lake. And one of the guys who's sitting in his boat because he's got a bad foot and he can't go in the water. The rest of us, it's warm. We're walking around in the water and having a Diet Coke or a beer or whatever. And all of a sudden he says there's a storm coming. So Chris and I walk over and I've got the Eclipse that year. That year it's like 3 years ago, and he's got his Sun Cat, and we look at this guy's radar on his phone, and my God, it's a massive storm coming our way. So and there were 7 boats, and I chose to go out in the middle of the lake where I thought I would be safer, throw the anchor, take sails down, go in the cabin, lock it up, and ride it out. And my anchor held and everything. Nobody was able to sail back except Chris in a Sun Cat. He sailed
Interesting.
all he sailed all the way back. We had 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and that Sun Cat handled the wind. Now again, I'll say it again. Chris is a superb sailor. He's
Right.
no slouch, that's for sure. And we had damaged boats. One guy bounced off the rocks. A couple
Oh
other
no.
people they pulled into a port somewhere. I was the only one who stayed out in the middle, and they thought I was dead. Till they called me on the
Oh
radio,
my.
and I said, "Yeah, I'm firing my outboard up right now. I'm coming home. What's for dinner?"
Wow. Yeah. Do you remember what point of sail he was on when he was primarily when he was sailing out there in that? Did he ever say?
Well, I'm based on the position of the marina and the position of the storm. Um, he was close hauled. He was pretty close. He'd have to have been. And of
Yeah.
course that would be the best point of sail for a real extremely high wind because he can
Yeah.
control and spill off the majority of the wind. But he sailed all the way, and the rest of us didn't. We had a variety
Wow.
of boats. We had a Compact 16. We had 2 Hunters. We had a Capri 18, Catalina 18. We had my Eclipse. We had a Rob Roy.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
remember that. Yep, that's a 23
yeah,
footer, right?
yeah, it's a big boat.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, speaking of tor storms and catboats, let's talk a little bit about heaving to. I've heard some people say something called scandalizing is like the same,
yeah.
well, not the same, but it's the catboat version of heaving to for a sloop. Is that true,
Yeah.
or what's the word you
Well,
say?
it's very easy because all you do is let go of everything. And then you scandalize the peak halyard a little bit. So you drop it down, and that's how they control it. And then all you do is just kind of point into the wind. And if the rudder, like my rudder is real stiff, which is how I like it. So you put it somewhere and it stays there. Well, the rudders that are loosened, they'll float back and forth, and you don't move much. And the Sun Cat's the same way. The only difference in Sun Cat, they don't have to scandalize the peak. Whereas on the
Right,
horizon, there's just a little too much sail. And so you have to scandalize it, which just means pulling the peak down and you
right.
get rid of the top part of the sail.
So when you say peak, just for our listeners too, because I think I think I know what you're saying too, is that's the top boom, right? Is that what we're saying? We're
Yes,
lowering the
yes,
top boom,
yes.
right?
The peak is that extra the extra boom, you might say, that's on the top of the sail, and it has its
Right,
own halyard, and its halyard pulls it toward the mast. So
right, right,
when you talk about scandalizing it, you release that. Now the throat, see, you got a peak and you have throat on a catboat, and the throat is the main part of the sail. So you pull the main part of the sail up all the way, and then the peak goes up to about maybe a 45 or even a 30-degree angle, and that's what gives you sail shape. So when they say scandalize the peak, what they're saying is you're releasing the peak halyard some, so it luffs. The main part of the sail is still there. I mean, and still controlled, but you've cut away an awful lot of the sail. Plus, the part of the sail that you've gotten rid of is the part of the sail that's up and highest in the wind. So,
Right.
and that
Yeah.
works. I
Yep.
I, I have not really done any heave to operations with mine other than trying it. I
What
did a
about
lot
the
of things this year because it's only my first year on the boat. I
right?
sailed it about maybe 12 times down here, and then maybe 20 times at home this summer. So I've only
Are
had
you
like
sailing?
30. Sorry.
So, oh no, I just was, before I forget, I wanted to ask you when you mentioned the tiller and your rudder being stiff. So one of the other things I wanted to point out to the listeners too about the Horizon Day Cat and Horizon Cat, and then the cat boat lineup, in other words, that Com-Pac made, from what I learned versus the traditional cats, is that those other traditional cats typically had barn door rudders, whereas
Barn door orders, right?
yeah, with our boats or the compact boats, the rudders are not that. So can you
That's
talk a little
correct.
about the design of the rudder for
Well,
that boat?
it's I think they call it stab rudder, but I mean it's just a straight sheet down. I mean it's probably foot and a half long, no, excuse me, wide, and goes down, below the keel, so it goes down about 4 feet or so. Whereas the barn door rudder, if you looked at it, I mean, the horizon is about a foot, foot and a half, and the barn door rudder is more like 3.5 feet long. So it's way, it sticks out of the back of the boat. It does not go real deep. It only goes about 6, 8 inches deep. And it's
Right.
supposedly it's very, very good for control, but it's terrible when you have to trailer it or anything else because you can't do anything with it.
Yeah. Well, you're adding a lot of length unless you take the rudder off every time, I guess, to the
Right,
boat when you're trailering it.
right.
So do you so one of the big things with compact boats, for example, my Legacy, the first one that I bought was a 2021, and the dealer I purchased her from ordered her with the Ruddercraft foiled rudder, which at the time was not a standard um,
No,
part of the kit with the Legacy. Although I know a lot of people talk about how the ruddercraft or foiled rudders in general increase the performance. Specifically with the pointing the boat's
yeah,
ability to point.
yeah.
Do you have one on your
No,
Eclipse, or it doesn't sound like
no,
you have one
no,
on your
no.
Horizon either then?
Stock rudder, the one that came from the factory on both the Eclipse and the Horizon. And I haven't felt
No.
the need. Now, I don't race either one of these boats. When I raced an MC Scow. So it's not like I didn't buy a Horizon to race it. It's not, and neither is the Eclipse. They're not fast boats. They're solid boats. They're sturdy. They sail exceptionally well. They're very, very predictive. The other thing I always tell people is with a compact boat, they typically will just sail by themselves. And I mean, the rudder, if we go back and I compare, like on my Precision 21, if you let go of the rudder, the boat pointed into the wind and it stopped. So if you fell off the boat and you didn't have the tiller lash down, you just had to swim a little way. You fall off an Eclipse or fall off the Horizon, you better be a real good swimmer or have a power boat handy because that thing's going to
Yeah,
sail.
yeah,
It's going to sail off
yeah,
till it runs into something. I mean, it's just that they're balanced. The boat
yeah.
is so balanced. It's just, the Precision was a lighter boat, and especially the 18 was very sensitive to where you put things. I mean, you'd have this big cooler, and you find, oh, no, don't put the cooler there because that's not going to work. We got to put it here, to balance the boat out. Whereas the Eclipse or the my Horizon, the balance doesn't seem to be affected much by what you place or people even. I mean, I had my family out, my daughter and her family, and also had my son and his family out sailing this summer, and my wife Carol, and that's a lot of weight in a boat. You didn't even know it. Didn't seem
Yeah,
to have any impact on it. It handles it well.
that's really interesting, I think, to note about compact boats, because I actually thought the same thing with my very first Legacy, and that boat's only 16 and a half feet LOA. And I remember the first time I stepped from the dock onto the boat, and I was expecting it to go woo, like tip to
Yeah,
whatever side I had stepped on. And the boat felt like I was stepping on our 26-foot sailboat from when I was a kid,
yeah,
basically.
yep,
I
yep.
was
Yeah,
so
they're
taken aback by the stability of the boat. And the same with the weight
yeah,
distribution. I mean, I know they talk about, especially with racing and cruising and all that, but like for me, day sailing, I'm not always as conscientious about that. But to be honest with you, it's because I don't really need to be, because even on the Legacy, in my experience with the boat, I can't say that it's where I put the cooler or anything has made a difference at all in the stability of the boat, at
yeah,
least as,
yeah,
noticeably speaking, at least.
yeah. I agree.
Yeah, they're really amazing boats. Well, so I'm gonna just really quick skip back to when we talked about heaving to and scandalizing all that jazz. You said something about with the tiller. So like on a sloop, typically what I think I've never done this before on my own boat, only in my ASA courses that I ever do it. But I want to say that we used to lash the tiller to leeward. Um, so with your boat, you're saying you didn't need to do that. Like if you're scandalizing and you're dropping that peak halyard to get rid of some of that top part of the mainsail, um, and you're
Well,
just
if
basically you're
yeah,
letting the sail all the way
if
out too. Then I
if
mean,
the yeah, just you uncleat it. It does whatever it
yeah,
wants, and
and you
that's
don't. So
the
you don't.
trick. No, so you
Yeah,
put the
and you don't do anything with the
tiller's
peak.
about
Okay,
tiller's about midships, and in the normally the tiller is relatively loose. I've tightened mine up because of the weight, and that's my own preference. But if it's
right.
relatively loose, the tiller will float back and forth. The sail it'll do like it does on any other boat. It'll move a little bit and then it'll come back, and it'll move a little bit and it comes back, and move a little bit and come back. Whereas in a cat boat, if you just let go of everything, most cat boats with small sails they'll take care of themselves. When we were out
Right.
when I was first out with a friend of mine down here in his Sun Cat. Went out and he said, "What do you say we have lunch?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." And I had brought lunch along, and so I went down to the cabin, and he just kind of let go of everything, and the boat stopped, Charlotte Harbor, and we ate our lunch and had a Coke, and then we started sailing again. I mean, and the only difference is Horizon has too much sail to do that, so you scandalize the peak.
Right. Yep. I have a friend who has a sun cat, and he sails Lake Pleasant in Arizona. And yeah, and a couple other guys he sails with have the same also have sun cats in their yacht club, and he's told me that that's what they do too. They just kind of let stuff
Yeah,
go, and
yeah, yeah. You just
that's all they have
let
to
go of
do.
everything, and it takes care of itself. Yep.
Well, I'm gonna have to experiment with my legacy. It's funny because when you listen to people talk about the reason why I know what I know is from reading a lot of Lynn and Larry party books, the people that circumnavigated multiple times on their wooden home built boats,
Yeah,
engineless, without engines, by the way.
yeah,
And they talk a lot about, and they wrote the book about storm tactics.
yep,
It's called
yep.
that, I believe, and that's what they describe. So everybody's boat is going to behave a little differently. So even though someone
Sure.
will tell you, this is these follow these steps. Like I'm reading now this really great book by Andrew Evans, and it's called Single-Handed Sailing Tips,
Yeah.
Tactics, Techniques, and Thoughts on. And yeah, you know who I'm talking about because aren't you the
Yes,
one
I
who
do.
listened to the podcast with him with
Yes.
his
Yes,
recent?
I did.
Oh
Yeah, he
my God.
scared the crap out of me. Now,
Yeah. So
as long as you're talking books, have you read my books?
Well, so I wanted to bring that up too, because I know you are a published author. And so I definitely want to talk about that because no, I have not read your books yet. And I know that Jerry, rest in peace, Jerry Hutchins, a wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful man,
Yeah.
someone whom I merely dearly miss.
Yeah.
He mentioned, I think on the Com-Pac website, there used to be some sort of a link or
Yeah.
something to your
Yeah,
books.
there was a link to Alone in the Gulf of Mexico, which is the first book I wrote. It's actually not the
Well,
first book I wrote, but it's the first sailing book I wrote.
Yeah, so let's talk about all that now since you brought it up. Let's so talk about I mean I know you like I said you're a published author, but tell us about all of the books you've written then and what they're about and where we can get them.
Well, I'm an automotive electronics person, and I still teach, but so I've written automotive electronics books, textbooks when I was teaching full time. And so when I stopped teaching full time, I'm still part-time teaching, but when I stopped full-time teaching, I decided I wanted to write some fiction. And so I wrote, the first book was Alone in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's a story about Captain Pete. Um, and and everybody in the book is a person that I met down here in Florida. So I mean, it meant a
Wow.
lot to it meant a lot to us because what I tried to do is I tried to match personalities. So, for instance, one of the guys was very, very um, proper, I'd say, and I made him Lieutenant Cowan in the Coast Guard. I mean, that's just the kind of personality he had. And so the book is a story about a captain who's teaching somebody how to sail, and that person hijacks the boat and forces them to sail to Merida, Mexico. And it's an eclipse because I owned an
Oh
eclipse in that.
my gosh.
Yeah, and
How
that's why the boat is even the name Off the Wind. It's in the book, and he forces him to sail, and then they keep him captive for a little while. They release him, and on the way back, he realizes that he's carrying a dirty bomb. So it's fiction.
Oh my
And then
gosh. Wow. That sounds like a thriller to me, huh?
well, I tried to make it that, and I followed up with Back to the Gulf of Mexico, which is another
Hmm.
trip to Merida, Mexico, but not in the eclipse. And it's a continuation of the story, but you wind up sailing into Cuba and a few other places like that. And then the last one, which is the most recent one, is Captain Pete and the Dry Tortugas. And it's
Oh,
about,
wow.
and it's again, it's got some intrigue with it. Um, I guess in theory, I mean, the first two books go hand in hand because the first one is you know, alone in the Gulf of Mexico, and the next one is back to the Gulf of Mexico. And then all of a sudden, there was a time period there where nothing's going on, and then I wrote the Captain Pete and the Dry Tortugas because I'm fascinated with the Dry Tortugas. And my wife and I went there last year, and it was just a fabulous place to walk around and see all the stuff that was done. Now we didn't sail there because my wife's not that kind of a person. And but we
Yeah.
we took a boat out there. You have to take a boat to get to the Dry Tortuga. It's about 70 miles west of Key West. And
And
if the weather holds, that's where Crazy Carl and Chris are going. They want to try to leave from Key West and sail west and stop off at their Marquesas, and then from there, that's one day and then one more day and be in the Dry Tortugas. But it's a
I
fabulous
just
trip.
finished I just finished reading another book by the guy that hosts the podcast that I where I would we were just talking about with the sail from HE
Yeah.
with that he his first book was is called Becoming a Sailor, a single-handed sailing journey, and so he bought a I guess it was a Dufour 30, and he sailed that boat from so I this is the so there's a lot of saints in Florida. St. Petersburg on the west coast, right, of Florida, near
Yep.
Tampa. Is it near
Yep.
Tampa? And he
Yep.
sailed that boat by himself. This is like his first ever like sailing single-handed passage down to the Dry Tortugas. And so he was talking about the fort down there and some of the
Oh
history and
yeah. Oh,
painted some
it's
pictures.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's such a historical place, and they have these docent tours, and the guy we had was a sailor, and it's such an interesting place that he gets 2 days off every other week. What does he do? He sails out to the Dry Tortugas. So
Wow.
he's at the Dry Tortugas every day running these tours. Two tours a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. But I mean, the guy, and when you talk about all these bricks, and this place is unbelievable. There's a billion bricks, and they were all
Right.
carried by sailing boats out to this fort, make this fort. It was all
Yep.
made by hand because there was, no,
Yep.
this is a very, very interesting place. I'd recommend it to anybody. I had
I,
intended, it was on my bucket list to sail out, and I was going to take the Eclipse. And I had my sailing buddy who was all prepared, and we got the charts and everything. We were all set, and then he wound up having a massive stroke. So that was the end of that.
oh,
So
oh my God.
I'll probably never sail out there. But my wife said, well, let's go anyway. So we went last year, and it was just a phenomenal day trip.
Yeah, yeah. The history of that place, I think, so yeah, right. It was built to be a fort to protect
Yep,
the
yep.
states, and then I think it was like a prison or a
No,
psychiatric. I don't know. There was
became
all sorts of.
it became a prison, but originally it was designed as a fort to protect the United States of America. In other words, if you look at the, this is when there were all sailing ships out there. If you look at the lay of the land, the Dry Tortugas is shallow, and it's literally like a dome in the middle of deep water. So there's deep water all around it. So these big sailing boats had to go past the Dry Tortugas if they came from the south or they came from the north and they wanted to attack Florida. So they put the fort
Yeah,
there. Never
yeah.
fired a single cannon because
That's what I remember reading.
power boats, steamboats came in and they said, "Hey, we don't care how deep the water is." So that was the end
Yeah.
of it. So it sits out there. It's a national park now.
And I think I read that it was named for the turtle or something. Isn't Tortuga mean turtle in Spanish or something? And that
Uh, it, it it may. I think
there's no water there.
It was more. There's no water. It's why it's dry. There's no water on it. Everything. Like even if you sail there, you had to bring your own water. You got to bring your own water.
Yep.
They do have now. They have camping on the island, right in shadow of the fort. They have like 10 campsites, and they have one porta potty for men and one porta potty for women. But there's no water. It's literally a porta potty that they come out
Yeah.
or twice a year and pump out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
it
my
sounds like an
books.
amazing place. Yeah. So
Oh,
how
it
do
was
people get your books then? Tell us how we can
Amazon,
find them.
Amazon,
Okay.
and
And you know what?
they're available as a Kindle or as a hard copy.
And you know what, Al? I feel like so badly because I didn't even do a real proper introduction to the listener. I always do a little, I do a
I'm not
recorded
a
introduction before anyway, but just so people know
I'm
your
not a
full,
I'm not a proper person, Shell. Don't worry about it.
but tell people your full name so they know who to look up as the
Al
author.
Santini. My real
Okay.
name is Alan, but only my mother called me that. It's Al
Yeah.
Santini. And
Okay.
again,
I'm
it's
going to,
Amazon, and it's either a hard copy or Kindle.
yeah, I'll put links to that too in the podcast show notes so that people can easily access those. And I know I want to because
Cool.
I've been meaning to get those. So I'm so glad that you reminded me about that because I love to read anything sailing for sure. So let's see. One of the things I want to also, which we sort of have covered, and I do want to be respectful of your time. I know I said an hour here, so I'm trying to think. We started a little bit earlier, so you let me know when I need to shut up. But I do need to ask you a little bit more about the sailing single-handed sorts of things. With both your Eclipse and your Horizon, if you wouldn't mind just sort of giving the listeners sort of an overview of what it's like to do that. And I think I kind of feel like you've hinted at one boat being maybe a bit more conducive to a single-handed sailor, meaning the Horizon, but that certainly people do it with the Eclipse as well,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I did. I had the Eclipse for 9 years, and the only reason that I tell people I aged out of it. When I bought the Eclipse, I was amazed at how easy it was to step the mast. But as I got older and older, it got harder and harder. And you know, and the fact that you had to do all these little things. You had to slide the mast back and you had to pin it and you know all the rest of the stuff. And you also had the two sails. So that's where the Horizon was a simpler boat. But I single-handed all of my boats, all nine of them. And you know, so I mean, I don't think there's any difference in the Eclipse or the Horizon. I mean, the Horizon is probably easier because you only have, you know, one main sheet. You don't have a Genoa to worry about or a jib to worry about, and that makes it a little bit easier. But by the same token, you have the peak, and the way I look at it is the peak is kind of the equivalent of the Genoa in terms of, you know, I used to make my Genoa smaller, especially if I was trying to, you know, single-handed and I was going to use my autopilot or whatever and set it up. And I would run the Genoa down to maybe, you know, 50% or whatever, because it made the boat a little slower, but it made it a little more stable and the autopilot could handle it better. And I do the same thing on the Horizon, have an autopilot on it. And you know, it handles it better with the peak scandalized a little bit.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And
But they're
I just want to say,
both easy boats to single hand. I single hand most of the time.
did you look or consider the smaller, like the Sun Cat or Sunday Cats too? I thought that you might
Yes,
have.
yes, I did, but I wanted the bigger boat.
And you wanted the
You
bigger
know,
boat just because more cabin space or just more space in
yeah,
general or
just more
stability?
space. Yep, more space in general, and it didn't bother me to tow it. Although maybe eventually that'll become an issue, and then I can always go down to a Sun Cat. But I mean,
Right.
I've sailed a Sun Cat for 3 winters down here with my buddy. So I knew the boat. I knew it really well, and I think it's an extremely capable boat, as evidenced by how Chris does anything with it. Um, but it's just a bit small. And last summer was
Yeah.
interesting. We were at the dock, and Chris came over and he says, "Can I come aboard?" I said, "Sure." So he had his Sun Cat right next to mine, and he said, "Wow, this thing is cavernous." That was the word he used in comparison to mine. And so I went over to his, and I refreshed my memory, and I mean, they're similar in terms of their setup. Um, but I mean, you know, there's a big difference in size. I mean, you know, I don't know what the beam on the Suncat is, but the Horizon is 8 feet 4 inches. Now that's a
Yeah, I
foot
think on the
wider.
sun, yeah. Yep. Then the Eclipse,
That's
I think, is seven
is it?
something, right?
Yep, 7.4. It's a foot.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
The Horizon is a foot wider than the Eclipse.
right.
Now that
Yeah,
adds a lot. It adds a walkway, which you don't have on the Eclipse. The Eclipse, when you want to go forward, you go up
right.
over the cabin, whereas on the Horizon, you
Yeah.
have a walkway. You got about maybe 10 inches wide on both sides of the boat. It's very, very convenient.
Yeah, that's what same for the Legacy versus the 23. The side
Yeah,
decks on the 23 are just extremely generous, but on the Legacy, yeah, you're walking over the cabin.
yeah,
Um,
and
so
that's
so
okay. You
let's
know,
so if someone was interested in these the Horizon and the Eclipse and they're a trailer sailor instead of like, keeping
yeah,
a
yeah.
slip or a mooring. I mean, would
Hmm.
you say both are both of those boats would be good trailer sailors in your mind
Absolutely,
or
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Because they
Okay.
both have the mast ender system, and that means that you can step the mast by yourself. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, if you try to step it with two people, they get in the way. You step
Yeah.
it by yourself. And even
Yeah.
when I would go, or I go even now, and I go down to, you know, I launch at the Venice train station and then go out into the Gulf, and you know, people say, "What time should we meet?" And I say 10 o'clock. I get there at 9:30 so that I can
Yeah.
step the mast and everything. Otherwise, they're running around, and you know, I screwed up the sail coming down on my clips once. And I learned my lesson because what was happening was I had somebody along and they were talking to me. And, oh, can I help? Can I do this? Can I do this? And as a result, I forgot to get the sail below the split of the hinge. And it meant as soon as the mast started coming down, it cocked and it put a divot in the mast and everything, which I had to repair. So,
Yeah.
I'm kind of a single-handed person. I mean,
Yeah.
there are some people that I sail with frequently that I've even taken trips with, but they're few and far between.
Well, since you brought that topic up, I have a friend who just bought a Suncat. He traded in an old Suncat to get a newer Suncat,
Cool.
and he just got um, he's on the forum too, actually. He's the one that sails at Lake Pleasant. And anyway, one of the things we were talking about, and that I was really researching quite extensively when I was considering getting the Suncat, well, not almost every boat that I looked at or inquired about had that issue where the person wasn't lowering the sail
Yep.
all the way down onto the stub before they, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Before they,
It's a com
right. So,
it's a common issue. It really is. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
when I bought my Eclipse, there was a divot that was in the mast slide, and I repaired it, and I didn't know why it was there until I did it myself, and I put the
right.
divot right back in, and I had to repair it and put
Yeah,
a couple of sail slugs in and everything else, and it was like okay, and I've written instructions for the Eclipse and I have it in red. You know, make sure before you lower that this is what you check, and you got to make sure that the entire sail, and the Horizon is the same way. The entire sail has to be in the stub. It cannot have any part of it in the mast above the
yeah,
hinge, because if so, you're
yeah.
going to wreck something,
So
and
it's not
that's a
really,
no-no.
this sort of leads into one of my, I have two last questions. Is if you could change or improve anything about either the Eclipse or the Horizon, if you had thoughts on that. And just as a tail note onto this issue we were just discussing, the issue with that, I don't believe is a design issue at all. It's just that people that own the boats don't realize, I believe, that the importance, or they're not fully aware of what sort of damage can happen, because it's not always an acute sort of thing that happens. My understanding is it's because of it continually that being done, that chronically you develop where the actual track of the mast splays open, or you sometimes get cracks. Like one of the boats that I looked at, there was a crack in the mast stub.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so I
because
mean,
that's because somebody didn't put what cracked it was the slide, the main slide, that hunk of metal, which is about 3 inches
yeah,
long. If that gets caught right at the split, man, it does all sorts of damage. And it's strong enough to hold the mast up. You'll look at the
yeah,
mast coming down, and the mast is at a 45-degree angle, and you say, "What the hell's wrong here?" And then you realize that you pull the mast back up, and you realize that you boogered the daylights out of the sail slide, or
right,
even cracked it. And
yeah,
to me, now when I trailer sail, I do not pin the boom in its up position. See, the way this thing is designed is you take the boom and you have all the sail and you raise it up above the split. And there's two holes at the hinge, and there's a long straight pin, and you put the long straight pin there. Now the boom, when you take the sail down, sits on that pin. And that's perfect if you're in a slip. But if you don't put the pin in, then after you step the mast and you pull on the sail, you raise the sail and you just pull it all the way up as far as it'll go. It's up in the main part of the mast. And when you release
right,
it, it automatically goes below the split. So I don't use the
yeah,
pin when I trailer sail. I only use it when I'm in a slip for a couple of days.
right. Okay. Yeah, well, that's
And
really good to know.
that's on both boats.
Yeah, yeah.
Now in the
So,
summer I'm in a slip.
Oh, that'll be nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing the opposite. This coming summer, I'll be trailer sailing and I'll have no slip. So,
Well,
yeah,
hey,
we'll
make sure
see.
you
I'll get the.
trailer make sure you trailer sail to CLR, Carlisle Lake
I know
Rendezvous.
I definitely want to do that. I've got
Okay.
that on the to-do list, and I believe I think I saw in the forum that there's some specific dates that have been mentioned, right?
Probably. Steve was going to contact, we're going to possibly move locations. We're going to go over to the Carlisle Lake CSA, Carlisle Sailing, CSA, Carlisle Sailing Association, and they have docks and
Right.
they have bathrooms and showers and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
No fuel though. That's one of the things that the
Mhm.
other we used to be at Dam West, and Dam West is they call it that because it's at the west end of the dam for Carlisle Lake.
Right.
Dam West Marina, nice, really nice people. Charge a little more, nice docks, nice bathrooms, a real nice open area where you can go and relax with air conditioning and everything, and ice and all that stuff is available there. That's one of the things that we lose. We won't have the concession area or whatever. But I think Steve says we're going to go there, and he's in charge, so we're all going to follow.
Yeah, and it'll be something new to explore and
Yeah,
try, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
two massive docks, and I think you can dock on either side of the dock, and they're like 100 feet long or whatever. I don't know. They're
Yeah, it's like a
massive.
side tie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It
Yeah.
will be a side tie, right?
Yep. No, that sounds awesome. I think it's about well, it'll be about a seven something hour something for me to get there. I'd say driving time,
Yeah,
probably around maybe eight, something like that.
it's 5
But
from
I mean,
me.
yeah, and I think that would be so. I don't know if you've thought about doing this, but there's an event that starts in, oh, I don't know if it's north or south of Corpus Christi, Texas, but it's called the Texas 200. Have you heard of
Texas
that one?
200. Yeah, yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm not
I
gonna I'm not gonna do it, but yeah, I've heard of it.
it
Uh,
sounds like a blast. I
yeah, it
want to
does.
do
Well,
it.
CLR is a blast too because we have a race that we don't care who wins, and we have we
Yeah.
sail to there's a silo in the middle of the lake, so we have we sail around the silo, and then usually in the mid afternoon we follow Steve to a shallow area, sandy area. We drop anchor and we walk around amongst the boats and we talk and then at night, we'll all go out for dinner together. Sometimes we'll
Yeah,
all go
that
out for
sounds great.
breakfast together, have a sandwich on the boat and for lunch and everything. But I mean, and they're nice people. They really are. I mean,
Yeah.
I consider these people, even though I only see them once a year, I consider them friends. Like Carl will show up, and Chris will be there. There's Dan who comes from Indiana. There's Roger who has the Rob Roy. I think he comes from Iowa. Um, there's a couple of people. There's three people that are local. They got a compact 16 and two hunters. And then me. I mean, it's not a huge group, but Sarah, who is Steve's wife, she takes good care of us. She really does. And she, even when my wife doesn't usually go, she's been down there twice, I think, twice. Yeah, and said, but all you do is sail.
Yeah.
She says, there's no
Yeah.
shopping. There's nothing else to do. I said, well, there's Walmart right over there. No, no, no. No,
Yeah.
anyway.
No, I would love that. I think that would be, I just want to, you know, do some adventuring with my boat.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
do
think
it.
that sounds like it would be a really great, and it would be so fun just to meet everybody else because
Yeah,
we
yeah, and
talk online, but to
that's
get
right.
in together in person would be
Yeah, now
really,
you're retired, right? Or
well, semi,
semi-retired, or
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm a freelance writer, but I don't get me going on AI because it's
no,
basically
no,
putting
no.
me out of job. But
Yeah, I
but at any
understand.
rate, yeah, I used to be a technical writer. I used to write like you wrote textbooks for automotive, I wrote
Yeah.
textbooks for how to use Microsoft Word or Microsoft
Oh, okay.
Excel or
Maybe I read them.
more proprietary software when I worked for I used to work for Anheuser-Busch, and they had
Ah,
some proprietary software that I would, well, I didn't, I was a consultant in that role. I didn't technically work for them. I worked at
yeah,
Anheuser-Busch, but in a
yeah.
consultant capacity. Anyway, I digress. But my point is, yeah, I'm a semi-retired, I would say. But
Yeah,
at any rate,
I'm a 10-hour a week employee of an automotive training aid company that's in Quebec City, Canada. So
oh wow.
like I taught a class today, for instructors how to use our EV400, which is a piece of training equipment that's designed to take students and safely teach them how electric vehicles work.
Oh,
So
wow, that sounds really cool.
that's what I do. And
Yeah,
I'm
I was a
because I'm
teacher for a while too. I used to teach people about computers, hardware, software, networking, all that jazz,
mhm.
but it's that stuff changes, I'm sure, as it does in your industry. It just
Oh yeah.
changes
Oh
so
yeah.
fast with the
Yeah.
technology, right?
Well,
But
I've I taught for 57 years.
oh
So,
wow. Yeah. I haven't
well,
been in a classroom in a while, but
well,
yeah. It was
I taught high school for a while, and I went to an area vocational center, and then I went to a
yep,
community college, and I retired
yep,
from
I
the
did that
community
too.
college, and then I worked for the
Yeah.
Environmental Protection Agency and taught technicians how to fix cars that failed emission tests. Did that for 10 years, and then
Yeah,
Consol
I did
Lab
government
approached
stuff
me.
too. Yep.
Yep, yep. My wife just,
That's
my lovely
yep, I
wife
did.
just brought me a cup of coffee. Look at this.
Oh, well, that's nice that she did that. Well, I
She
don't
did.
want to keep holding you up. I know you've probably got other
Okay.
things you want to do, but let's close with, is there anything else that you would want listeners to know? And if so, let's hear all about it.
Oh, I don't know. I'm fascinated by sailing. Let's put it that way. I have more books than
Yeah.
Carter has pills, and I'm always what am I reading right now? I'm reading. Let's see. I'm reading Catboat Summers by John Conway. I'm about a third of the way through it, and he's got I forget what kind of a catboat, but it's a catboat. So I'm always reading something, and then I sail. um, the most I sailed was one year I sailed 85 days. So I
Oh
consider
my
that
gosh.
pretty good. Well, I'm down here and now I work, so I got 10 hours. So like I taught today and I'm teaching Thursday. So those are my 2 days. I'll do 5 hours and 5 hours and I'm done. So that left leaves me, today and Wednesday tomorrow. And I'm probably gonna go sailing Friday. And when I'm down
Okay, that
here,
sounds
the
fabulous.
only when I'm down here, the only prerequisite is my wife does not want me to go out on a golf by myself. So I always
Oh, yeah.
I drag somebody along, even if they don't want to go sailing. I take them along. And whereas
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the summertime, I sail by myself most of the time. But the lake is about
Yep.
an hour away. It's 19,000 acres. So it's like,
Hmm.
a huge lake, and I enjoy that too. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, do you do the social media thing if people wanted to get in touch with you to ask questions or advice about a Horizon
Yeah,
Cat or
yeah, you can give them you can put my email down.
okay, I'll put that in the show notes as well for the podcast. And
Yep.
yeah, Al, I feel like I could talk to you. You're gonna have to come on the show again at some point because I feel like there's still more things that I'd love to just ask you about. And you just have a wealth of knowledge, and I
Oh, I don't
love
know about
talking
that, but
sailing, and
okay.
I really love
Good.
talking compacts.
Hmm. And by the way, if you really want to know about me, go to YouTube and put an Al Santini keynote. And YouTube, it'll come up with
Okay.
I was asked by an automotive group after I'd been teaching for 50 years to summarize how I got to that point.
Oh, wow.
It's about an hour long. It's 2 years ago, 2012, almost 2023.
Oh, okay, well, I'll find that link and I'll put that in the show notes too.
Okay, that's fine. All
Yeah,
right,
that
Shell.
sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Al. I just am really so grateful. And I appreciate your time so much. And I know people are going to just, like me, just love this podcast because you've just
I hope so.
talked
I hope so.
so
Nice
many
talking to
amazing
you.
things here. Yeah, thank you
Okay.
so much again. Okay,
All
take good
right.
care.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Bye
fair
now.
winds. If you are enjoying my podcasts, please consider following and or subscribing to my show. Your support truly means the world to me, as well as inspires me to keep bringing you stories from others out there with a passion for getting out on the water. Until next time, fair winds.